islands are at the front lines of climate change. They're at the front lines of many other challenges that we face in Europe and around the world.
Islands are at the center of many issues. They have been hit by natural events and many difficulties. And to add to that, many function on tourism, but tourism can be detrimental to island communities. So how can we keep them safe, and what role does policy and digital solutions play in aiding island communities? We talk with Bonnie Lewtas, founder of TurtCo. She tackles how to aid island communities and bringing innovation to communities to elevate islands everywhere. This is the Gen Z in STEM podcast. I'm your host, Myadrin, and I hope you're as excited as I am. Let's get to it.
So, welcome, Bonnie. Today we'll be talking about climate resilience and a few different topics. So happy to have you here.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
So first, tiny bit on you. So you have worked extensively on sustainability and resilience projects for islands in various parts of the world, from the Caribbean to Europe. You work on island tourism, and island tourism in general can be detrimental to communities around. So you have passion for islands and you consider these challenges. And with this, you founded TurtCo that helps bring strategies and innovates to aid island communities to be more sustainable and resilient. But yeah, first of all, could you give our listeners a bit of an overview on your background and who you are?
Yeah, sure. Well, first of all, thank you for having me here. It's a pleasure to talk to you. So my name is Bonnie. I am originally from Canada. So I grew up in the cold, not on an island, in just outside of Montreal. And I just have always had a passion for tropical marine environments. So when I was around 15, I went to Hawaii for the first time, actually with my figure skating coach because a friend of mine had moved there. And I just was so stunned by the beauty of the islands and the environment. And I just felt so, at home in the kind of lush tropical environment and by the ocean. And I also, at the same time, noticed that there was quite a clash between the development that was going on there, and especially the hotel and tourism industry and the local environment. So I really just became fascinated by that topic. My parents were also quite active environmentalists, so I really grew up in nature and having a connection with nature and animals. And then when I found that, okay, there's also this other marine, ocean, tropical environment that I am really, really interested in, and to see that they're also having a lot of clashes between development and industry and the environment, then I just thought that was an interesting topic to delve into. So I started going further and further into that. And when I was graduating from high school, I did a college degree in travel and tourism. And one of the research papers that I read was about this kind of self-destructive industry. So essentially, I think it was a paper about the Galapagos Islands. So people go there in order to see the ecology, but then by them being there, they have an impact on the ecology and it gets degraded. And the more successful the tourism industry becomes, the more the environment that they come to see degrades. And it's kind of this self-cannibalizing cycle. Oh, after I found that out or kind of had that realization, I thought, okay, that's first of all a really bad business model. So, if by doing better, you're degrading your core product, that's not going to last. So I thought there's something really going wrong with this industry of nature-based tourism. And on islands, it's just magnified because you have nowhere to go, so everything you have to deal with all of the challenges there because you're surrounded by water. So you're essentially an isolated community. Of course, it varies depending on the size of the island and how far they are away from the mainland, but especially in places like Galapagos that are very, very isolated, also very fragile ecosystems. So from there, I just became even more interested in the topic and more interested in it. And I studied environmental and sustainability studies with a minor in business and innovation at Acadia University in Canada. And got more into the topic. I did my research in the British Virgin Islands on sustainable hotel management and how they can, what they can do. And then I moved to Europe and did a master's in sustainable tourism management, and also with a focus on specifically the hospitality industry, mainly because they're the main economic pillar of the tourism industry. And yeah, then from there I started working, founded TurtCo, started doing a lot of consulting at the beginning, mainly in the Caribbean. And then lately I've been doing a lot more of European collaboration projects with different islands in Europe. And one last thing that ties into all of that, the reason I find islands specifically so interesting is that I tend to be a bit of a systems thinker. So I have a really hard time just narrowing in on one thing. I always see the connectivity of everything. And with an island, especially on a micro island, or you have such a bird's eye view, and you can see all the connections of the impact that everything has. And specifically in the field of sustainability, as you probably know, it overlaps on many different disciplines, many different topics. The impacts are just knock-on effects of everything. And you cannot grasp sustainability if you just look at one aspect. So on an island, you can, especially again, a micro or small island, you can really have an overview of the impacts of the entire system much more easily than you can in a really complex environment. Of course, islands are also complex, but in an environment with so many externalities coming in and out constantly, like in a metropolitan city, So I really just liked being able to have that view and to see the impacts of interventions or things that were going on.
Yeah. What I find super cool is that like you sort of realize what you want to do quite early on, and as you like saw it applied, you're like, okay, this is really like what I find interesting, and then you like keep going from that. Yeah. I think it's kind of funny because it's kind of similar to, well, not completely similar, but to like my background, where I knew I wanted to do like civil engineering and water management specifically due to islands, because I was living in Panama at the time. Yeah. And there's the Kunayala community, which are an indigenous community that actually right now are facing having to go back to the mainland because they lived on like these islands. And they have like, I went there and I saw that they had these problems with like not only like the islands flooding, but also, for instance, like waste and things like that, and energy. How do they do it? Because they're on an island in the middle of the ocean. Yeah. So.
Oh wow, that's super interesting.
Yeah. Yeah.
And what are those islands?
The Kunayala, it's like archipelago.
Nice.
There's like I think 300 something islands. Wow. And they have different sized islands with like communities. Some of them are more tourism, others are more like people and like communities. But,
local living. Yeah. Wow, super interesting.
Yeah, but I love that you like took that, and then like as you went through your education, then you like founded TurtCo, which was based on what you originally like sought out to do. So what I'm wondering is like, what's TurtCo mission? And because it has been 7 years since like you founded TurtCo, so how has that evolved, and how like have the projects like evolved as like the years have gone by?
Yeah, definitely. It's evolved a lot since I originally founded TurtCo. I think when you do your research and you come out of your studies, or at least this is what I experienced, you often learn about, I think you're in a technical degree, so you often learn about the technical and financial solutions to things. And when I did my research, I really thought, okay, I can take a hotel and I can redesign it and I can make it way more sustainable, way cooler, and way more profitable, right? So these solutions exist. They're out there. They're not anything new. You just have to find a puzzle of the different solutions that you can combine together for a specific situation and tailor it. So I graduated thinking, okay, I'll just make a business that does that, and then everyone will want to do it, and everything will be fine, and I'll go around transforming hotels to be more sustainable. And then when I'm done with the hotels, I'll work on the islands and the restaurants, and then all the islands will become sustainable. Because the technological solutions are there. And in many cases, if you come up with a creative combination of how to implement them, they're also more profitable. So win-win-win, But as I developed my company and as I started to do this, I realized that there's another dimension, which is the people and the business owners and the tourists and everybody's different interests, and in many cases, and also psychology, right? In many cases, it's very difficult to implement change with people that are already working 60 plus hours a week, right? Most hotel management disciplines are filled with people who are very, very overworked, very having a lot of pressure on them, and not always having the mandate to do certain things. And in these systems, sometimes it helps to make small steps rather than redo everything at once. And in order to convince a change on people that is an entirely different set of skills and it's an entirely different industry than the technological side or the practical side of implementing various solutions. So I think it took a little while to find projects and to readjust and to start working with people who wanted to make a change, and then we're just looking for advice on how to do it, or to work together with somebody who could support them, rather than trying to reach out to hotels that were not necessarily looking to do it. So when I first started, I was really interested in working with hotels that were doing nothing, and I wanted to make a big change. And over the years, I found out that it was more feasible for me to work with those who have a direction, want to make a change, have some capacity to do it, and are just looking for some tools and support. So that was kind of the first big transition. And more recently, I've had quite a major transition to the policy side of things. So now I work mostly with governments of islands, regional, as well as provincial or local governments, and really to work on how can we work with the locals on the island in order to figure out what they want to do and what solutions they already have, and then communicate that into a policy that not only doesn't hinder their progress, but also supports it. So that's mostly what I do right now. I work on a lot of intergovernmental projects between especially European islands, and those really involve the local community as well. But to try to then bring that up to how can we support them through helping the governments to adopt their policies.
Yeah. And so you've had experience with, like, I guess you could nearly say the like micro level, because a hotel or like one specific place, and now more like looking at policies. So think a bit more global and macro. So then from your experiences, what do you see as like some of the biggest like challenges facing island communities?
Yeah, really good question. I mean, the challenges facing island communities are massive and diverse. So no island is the same, but there are quite some common challenges. Climate change and environmental pressures are huge for island communities. And those can vary. So in the Caribbean, of course, you have a lot of storms, a lot of coastal erosion, you have seaweed issues, you have a lot of different environmental pressures, heat waves, droughts, flooding. But on some islands, you also have lack of water resources. You may have limited ability to grow or produce food. Dependence on imports is a big one. Many islands need to import almost everything, or currently import almost everything they use. Waste management. So waste management is also, in terms of energy, in theory, from a technical perspective, islands are ideally situated to be energy independent in general. Not all islands, many islands. Some of them have ample sun, ample wind, ample water resources in terms of waves, wave resources. They might also have very small scales, so you could really have electric vehicles or bicycles or whatever. So on a technical level, they're actually set up quite well to be energy independent. Maybe geothermal is an example. In terms of water, if you can couple that with a energy independent system, so some kind of renewable energy system, you're also close to the ocean, so you could do some kind of desalination. So there are technical solutions to solve water and energy issues. Funding, of course, and funding and policy is a different topic, but in theory, they're quite well situated to do that. Waste management is a huge challenge because islands are limited in terms of scope. And in general, waste management solutions require more scope and more volume. So that is a huge, huge challenge, which means that the best way or one of the best ways in many cases to reduce waste on islands, and to deal with that challenge is to cut it off at the source, which means switching from an import-dependent economy to a locally produced economy. And that requires a huge change. And then in terms of resilience, climate catastrophes, that requires severe investment and infrastructure. And really thinking about plans for communicating to people when disasters are coming. So that requires quite a high level of technological and communication solutions.
Yeah.
And planning, risk management. Yeah.
Uh-huh. And so then, since there's a lot of different challenges when it comes to like islands for many different factors. But so then, how do you tackle this? Like, are there like frameworks or principles that you can apply to help like communities be more resilient and also for sustainable tourism?
Yeah, there definitely are. My formula for it is always to start by asking them. So I generally come from the perspective of I don't really have the answers for you. I'm more a researcher to try to find out where you have the answers and then put them together so that everybody can see them. It's more like all the puzzle pieces are already there on the island, and maybe there's a couple missing that we might need to bring in external support. But I assume that the majority of the solution lies within the people on the island. And then how can I ask questions and talk to people and figure out what resources are already there and what things need to be adjusted so that we can put all those puzzle pieces together, see if there's a picture that's starting to form, and then maybe there's external support needed. But yeah, I would say, because every situation is different and every island is different and they may have common characteristics, but they are still all different. I really try to focus on asking and figuring out and kind of more coming with a researcher vibe rather than a we have solutions vibe.
Yeah. And I think, well, something that would be interesting to mention now is like maybe collaboration in the projects you're talking about, because like I'm curious how like an island can use others' knowledge, like, to help their island and their community in general. So TurtleCo is like a lead consultant for, I think he called it Interreg, like digital island projects, and where Interreg is like a collaborative program co-funded by the European Union, which involves numerous countries, mostly in Europe, but others too. So how does TurtleCo like collaborate with this network and like impact the like exchanges on resilience?
Good question. So right now, one of the projects that we're working on, as you mentioned, is Digital Islands, which is co-funded by Interreg Europe. We have 9 partnering regions on that project. So I know them off the top of my head, but just so I don't forget anyone. So it's islands in Friesland, the region of Friesland, including the islands, which is in the north of the Netherlands, Madeira, which is part of Portugal, Schres, it's difficult with all the languages, but Schres, which is an island in Croatia, the Azores, which is an archipelago of Portugal, Majorca, La Réunion, which is a French island in the Indian Ocean, as well as Mayotte, which is also a French island in the Indian Ocean, and the South Aegean region of Greece. So those are the partners. I did forget one. This is why I have my list. Åland, which is technically Finnish. So it's an island archipelago belonging to Finland, in between Finland and Sweden. So very, very dispersed group of islands, literally from the middle of the Atlantic to the middle of the Indian Ocean. So very, very dispersed. And of course, all also having quite different challenges. So and quite different goals. So that's the project. Those are the partners on the project.
Okay, so I was wondering, like how TurtleCo like collaborates with this network and how that impacts the exchange, like on resilience and like for island resilience.
Yep. So for the Digital Islands project, I work for the lead partner, which is the government of Friesland, and they're responsible for dealing or managing all the wishes of the different partnerships and putting those together into a methodology for how we can learn from each other and get the most benefits out of the project. So for digital islands specifically, the goal is how can the partnering islands learn from each other in order to use digital solutions to achieve the impacts that they want to see at the local level. And similar to the topic of sustainability, that's a really, really broad ask, especially for 9 completely different partnering regions over the course of 4 years. So you're essentially asking them to develop a digital strategy for the next 4 years that can support their islands, and digitalization similar to sustainability can cross everything. It can cross healthcare, environmental management, species management, crisis, earthquakes, hurricanes, everything that can touch so many different facets, how the government stores data, how they communicate, cybersecurity, many different things. So what TurtleCo did was first of all, we helped to build the consortium. So I actually helped to build the project. We found the partners with the government of Friesland, build the consortium, wrote the application together with other people, wrote the application. And then once the project was funded, we helped to support the partners to figure out how we can actually bring it down to a level where there can be a valuable exchange within this broad scope. So we helped to create the methodology for the project, how they will work with each other, and set up basically a structure for learning within the partnership.
Yeah. And so then you talked about like how this project kind of looks at the digital technology that can be brought for islands. So how does technology like maybe help address challenges that islands face?
Yeah, so I will first talk about one of the more obvious examples that I think everyone can quite easily understand. If you have an archipelago with thousands of islands and many people are living on different islands and there's only one main island, if you need healthcare, you might not have access to healthcare. So you have to always, for even small appointments, go to the main island. That's one very, very obvious instance that I think most people can easily understand of when it would make sense to have more digital technology, right? So that you can better manage healthcare. The same goes for transportation. How do you get from place to place? So in terms of an archipelago, I think there's many ways in which technology can help that, since usually you have one main island with almost all of the resources, and then you have all of the other islands that are having less access to services. So digital solutions can help there. Right now, so we've divided the project into 3 learning tracks to try to get a bit of more grasp on how can we unravel this detailed topic. So we have 3 learning tracks. The first one, which runs for 8 months, is about economic sectors. And after interviewing the partnership, we've determined through what they want and having a discussion together with everyone that there's 2 different topics that the partners are primarily interested in situation for economy. So around half of the partners are interested in increasing the digital skills with businesses that already exist. So you can imagine a small business that might need to have a booking system. How can they do that online? Maybe they want a website. How can they do that? So kind of basic digital skills, but also more advanced digital skills. So we have one group of partners that's working now on looking at what are the needs within their small and micro-sized businesses for digital advancement, and how can they then develop programs to satisfy those needs. And the other group of partners is analyzing data for circular economy. So that can be waste management. It can also be water flows, pollution, clothing, goods. So how can they make specifically what these partners are looking at is how can they analyze the circular economy and have it live updated. So not that every time they want to know which waste flows are coming in, where the water is going, how many products are being used, that a consultant has to come in and do a life cycle assessment or a big overview and give them a stagnant paper. So they would like to collect data and apply it to a digital solution so that they can monitor the progress of circular economy on the island and make steps towards that. So that's the first learning track. The second learning track, we haven't developed the subtopics yet, but the general topic of it will be public services. So how can the islands increase the services or support the services that that the government offers? So education, healthcare, government data. How can they integrate digital solutions to make that more accessible to people, especially in the rural areas? And then the third learning track is about quality of life. So then you touch on culture, art, environment, maybe how does tourism impact the locals, different things that involve around the quality of life of people living there. So those are kind of the three learning tracks. And by the end of, they each last 8 months. And by the end of the project, partners will have worked with each other in order to learn what they're doing on their islands, what the other partners are doing on their islands, and then create goals for each one.
Yeah. So I want to touch upon on what you just said on how so they're collaborating. So there's an exchange of knowledge between these different islands from different places, from Finland to all the way to the Caribbean. So how does collaboration and knowledge exchange play an important role in fostering island resilience and innovating? And also, is there moments when, for instance, one island or certain islands can learn from each other's successes and failures to benefit other islands?
Yeah, definitely. So that's what the entire project is about, basically learning from each other's successes and failures to benefit the other islands. So the concept is that a lot of this has already been done, and it may have been done in a different way than is relevant for your island, but many challenges are similar and many solutions are also similar, and you don't have to reinvent the wheel every time. So by collaborating with each other, of course, it forms a sense of community. So, islands are traditionally relatively isolated, depending on where they are and how far away from the mainland. And that breeds a lot of creativity and resilience and innovation, of course. But it also can feel lonely sometimes, And when you have so many islands around the world coming together, sharing in the same or similar challenges, even if you're at a different stage or you want to take a different angle, it still helps to have access to people who are doing similar things. And also just to, provide a larger scope, for what you're doing. So, that's on the one hand, it helps breed a sense of community that they're not alone in this. And there's thousands and thousands of islands. And if you come together, then it's, much stronger, power in numbers. And the other thing is just from a practical sense, you don't have to reinvent everything. So it could be that one island has a specific case that they've been working on for water management, and another island has already tried something similar. So island A is trying to develop it now. Island B has already tried, and they've made a lot of mistakes along the way, and they've had a lot of successes along the way, and they can communicate that to island A. And then they say, okay, yeah, we will learn from what you did, and maybe we will do it a little bit differently and adjust it to our own local context. So the more of that you can have going on, it just accelerates the development and accelerates the ability to get to the local goals quicker.
Yeah. And then, okay, if you look 5 or 10 years ahead, what changes would you like to see in how islands approach resilience and sustainability? And do you think there's a shift necessary to how mainland and nations view and interact with island communities? It's a big one, but
Okay, well, I mean, I don't want to speak for island communities, of course. They're all different, and they would probably be able to better answer at least the second half of that question themselves.
Yeah.
But from my perspective, I think there needs to be a lot more investment on islands. and like financial investment and a lot more infrastructure investment. And I think that the islands should be able to dictate where that goes themselves. So less kind of top-down facilities on here's what you can do to become a renewable island, and really here's a pot of money, not not unchecked, right? Like I know there's also a lot of corruption going on in many places, not just islands, but here are additional resources, financial resources that you can use to design your own plan for how you see resilience on your island. And I think that in many places there's a lot of knowledge, there's a lot of capacity in terms of talent and creativity and innovation. And if there were more financial resources, they can do that. I think the challenge is also islands are at the front lines of climate change. They're at the front lines of many other challenges that we face in Europe and around the world. I mean, also physically, if you look at a map, you can literally see that islands are at the edge, and that means they're absorbing oftentimes the brunt of the decisions that are made in other countries or in other in on the mainland. So from a global perspective, I think we have to value that for islands and say, thank you for absorbing the brunt of everything else that's going on in the world. And also, here's additional resources, a financial, a strategic, structural infrastructure to help you to deal with that. And then maybe also ask them, how can we take the brunt off of you? And in many cases, I mean, they communicate that very well, and nobody listens. For example, at the climate change summits right now, islands have been pleading their cases for years and years and years. They're saying the exact same thing over and over again, except for the message gets more serious every time, and still not much is happening in terms of really giving them the resources that they need. So I think that's one thing, and also dealing with our own stuff off of the island to take that burden off of islands. If we really cut climate emissions and stop overfishing all of the seas, then island communities will be much more able to deal with the local challenges that they have there, because we won't be dumping more and more challenges on top of them constantly. So I think that's one thing. Also, there's there's a lot of cases where islands are exploited, like let's just kind of call it what it is. Like they're the playground for other places, and people go there and leave a footprint, leave a trail of destruction, and then leave. You see that with the shipping industry, the fishing industry, the waste industry. I mean, there's literally islands that are the garbage dump of other countries. They literally just bring the trash there, dump it, and leave. And, things like that. That's obviously not okay. And also seeing that islands are much more connected to the environment in some cases, definitely for the ocean. And the ocean is, like the veins of our planet. So when we degrade the ocean, we also make it harder for islands and people living on islands to manage all of their challenges. But that being said, I would like to also focus on some of the positive things. One thing I've really seen over the past years is that islands have formed an amazing network of collaborating with each other. And that's really something that's global now. And I think the more that can grow, the stronger they are in numbers. And also looking at highlighting the unique, amazing things that happen on islands, all of the innovation, all of the creativity, all of the stories, all of the culture, and also how diverse they are. They have similarities, but they're so diverse. So many different types of people, different languages, different cultures, different types of foods, flavors, traditions. So I think highlighting that while also giving them the finance to develop the infrastructure that they need to build stronger houses that can withstand hurricanes, to develop technical solutions to challenges as well. So
Yeah, I totally agree. Like they have like a lot of diversity, biodiversity, beauty, but also
yeah,
and power. But I hope we can do more. But also thank you for like being part of people who kind of also in a way advocate for island communities and work with it. I think it's super important. So yeah.
thank you.
Well, yeah, thank you for coming on. And yeah, I'll put the links in the bio so people can see like TurtleCo and what you're doing. But yeah,
Yeah, well, thank you so much for having me. And yeah, really interested to follow along with your podcast and all the other speakers that you have on.
Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed the episode, please share it with friends and family and consider giving us a follow or rating on your favorite platform. We'll be back soon to bring more inspiration to your Monday.